Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shellcross. With me as always, Mark Ailey. Mark, I'm seeing a lot of you these days. This is nice.
Yeah, for sure. See, you want to know something funny? The other day, somebody heard an episode where we fumbled through the beginning like that, where we joked about it, and they said to me that they thought that was always recorded. They thought that was a recording, and you just came in after that. So I had to tell them, like, no, that's the original Tom every single time from the get-go.
Staring into your soul via Zoom, too.
Well, that's what I told him. I told him that my goal is to get him to crack, and very rarely does he ever crack. Like, I want him to mess up on that intro, so we have blooper reels.
The most important things in life.
Yeah, man. Commercial lending. I know you were talking about this a little offline before the show. Talk to me about what you learned here.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So, I had lunch with one of my lenders, and we're getting close to stabilizing a larger rehab, right? So on the show, we've talked multiple times about providing appraisers information on, just data to help them and to help you get the number that you're expecting on your refis. On the purchase, it's much less of an issue, but more on the refi side. On the commercial lending space, it's also very important to understand how your lender is calculating expenses, right? They take the actual numbers from you, but like for things like vacancy, maintenance, CapEx reserves, do they have set percentages, set numbers that might be different than what you're thinking? And if the expenses are different, the NOI is going to be different, and thus the valuation is going to be different. Same thing too, like what, appraisals that they've been getting back, where have cap rates been in the last, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days compared to a year ago? Because if you take something, it was, you're thinking still a 6 cap and they're saying, no, appraisers come back 6.5, that's a big swing, right? So I guess the better you understand that up front, just ask those questions like, hey, how do you guys underwrite this? Just so you can better predict that valuation, not get blindsided on the back end. So I had an interesting combo, just getting more details there. And for the most part, I was aligned, but there's some things here or there that I wasn't. I was like, oh, this is good to know going into a refi.
Well, I think it's more important now than ever to understand some of those questions, or understand how things are being evaluated, because in this market, the banks and the lenders, they're going to be more conservative than ever right now. That I think if you've been in the real estate game for the last 5-10 years, even, like, now is going to be the most conservative point. Then all it takes to change one thing, like you're talking about, one of those variables, they'll throw off your entire business model. So
yeah, 100%. Like DSCR is an issue right now, right? And to my say, we'll lend up to 75, 80%, but like you might be down at 65 or whatever the number is because of DSCR. And then you find out like a lender used to be doing 3% vacancy, now they're doing 5%, and it's like, okay, that's another hit against you. That's more money I got to, leave in the deal, so to say. So, again, it's not such a big deal on the purchase. You can usually make those numbers work. They have a target that they can march towards. But these refis, like, you got to know the game, right? You got to know just what box you're playing with it, so you're not blindsided.
Yeah, as another side note, so you triggered me to say something. We are going to actually have an appraiser on the show here in a few weeks. So that'll be the first appraiser we've had on there. We're going to really drill down to some of a local appraiser's process and their thinking, and especially how things are changing to the more conservative side these days.
Yeah. All right. What's our housing provider tip of the week?
All right, housing provider tip of the week. So a lot of these platforms now, whether it be Appfolio, Buildium, or any of these ones, even the free ones, they're allowing you to accept credit cards as a form of payment. And what thing is, as a housing provider, that's important for you to understand is what the consequences are if somebody challenges a credit card. Now, I don't know if some of you may never had this happen, but what can happen is a tenant can, place a 2 months payment of rent on a credit card, and then come back and challenge it. And understanding what that process looks like with whoever is the person accepting terms. So for us, it's Appfolio. Appfolio takes credit card payments, and if somebody disputes it, they then look into the legitimacy of it. And if Appfolio says that they can't challenge it or they don't have a leg to stand on, they have to credit it back, and then you're out that money. So for us, one thing that we've done, so kind of 2 tips here. One, understand what you're up against when it comes to accepting credit cards or when it comes to a tenant challenging a credit card charge. And then 2, the other thing that we do as part of our process is if somebody is someone's more than a month behind rent, whether maybe we're about to start the eviction process, or they're in eviction, we turn off their ability to pay with credit card for that exact reason. So kind of look at it internally. If you do accept credit cards, maybe there might be a time frame in the process or a point with a tenant that might be behind, because historically where we got burned, where we ultimately ended up with this policy is you put someone in eviction, also they pay 3 months on their credit card, and we think they're great, they're caught up, next month or so to pay, but they caught it before, and then all of a sudden you get 3 months of charges challenged, and Appfolio accepts it. So just be careful and make sure you understand, and then know where to turn off the credit card, or if you even can too. So
That's a good one. Hasn't happened to me.
yeah, no, it's happened to us. It's happened to us a handful of times. But where we always were burned was when it was always red flags for the tenant, right? The questionability of the tenant's ability to pay, and all of a sudden they spring forward with this credit card payment, and they do it with someone else's credit card, and that's their challenge. They say, "Oh, it wasn't my credit card." The guy that says that someone took my credit card and paid for rent, and you don't know because you just saw it. You actually probably celebrated. I got rent.
Yeah, they're coming around.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Mark, I'm excited for our guest today. So I know you guys will hit it off as well because like yourself, Mark, he is a go-giver. It's probably why him and I hit it off at the Midwest Networking Summit a month or so ago. He has a theater background. He's a real estate investor. He's the co-founder of BrightInvestor, a real estate data visualization SaaS company. He created his own role on Brandon Turner's Open Door Capital team by adding a ton of value. It all started with a GoFundMe request, which we'll dive into. Since then, he's worked for multiple commercial syndications. As I mentioned, the founder of BrightInvestor. Without further ado, Drew Mccluskey, welcome to the show. Drew, how are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing good. Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction.
Drew, I'm excited to have you because you've had such an interesting path here. So let's start at the very beginning. I know you dove into real estate, you caught the bug, you got on BiggerPockets, like most of us and most of our listeners. And we go out and we buy a quadplex, and it doesn't go, for us in Chicago, a 4-unit. It doesn't go as expected. Talk to us about that experience. Let's jump right into that first investment.
Yeah, so I found out about BiggerPockets. This was after my 19th birthday, probably maybe like 8 months or so after. I'd gotten these books for my birthday, and I was like, okay, whatever, real estate, I don't care. And then just one day I decided to pick them up.
What did you do for your birthday? Who was that?
That was my parents. That was the only gift I got was 2 books on real estate. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. Like, I don't really care about real estate, but whatever, I guess, Cool. So I just didn't read them. I'd never really had an interest in real estate up to that point. But yeah, so it was about 8 months later or so, I was really sick. And so I was just in bed and I started reading them. And my eyes started widening like crazy as I realized I started connecting dots. And so for me, I'm very much as soon as I see an opportunity, I just jump at it, which is great sometimes and absolutely horrible other times in terms of the effects that can come from that. So I think within just probably like about 4 months after that, a quadplex came up, and quadplex came up, and my dad was looking at trying to buy the property on the courthouse steps for the parking lot that came with it. It was a very rundown property, but for me, I didn't see that. All I saw was value add, and it's quadplex. It's perfect. Let's go. So my dad purchased the lot, and he was like, "Hey, if you can renovate this thing, then you can buy it from me. I'm fine with that. Whatever you want." So I was able to get into it with no money. I just needed to be able to fund all of the rehab costs. So how that one went, then I'll go ahead and kind of jump in for it because it was a relatively quick time. I spent maybe six to 7 months or so gutting this property. I found out a lot of things through that. One, we didn't do an inspection because bought it courthouse steps and everything. Like it wasn't something that we really needed to do an inspection on. My dad just wanted it for the lot. So I started doing rehab, and I realized that everything would need to be rewired. Everything would need to be replumbed. There were 3 sheets of drywall on almost everything. So it was just a way bigger undertaking than I was expecting. I was spending like 6 hours every single day just in there with a sledgehammer, ripping out everything I could. And I got a big wake up call because this is, again, I think probably 7 to 8 months in. I was pulling up all of the flooring because I realized that it was rotted. And underneath that, I realized that then the floor joists were all rotted as well. This is showing like how blatantly, naively I jumped into this deal. I read 2 books on real estate and was like, all right, let's go.
What did you think the budget was going into it?
I think I thought it was like $20,000. I was expecting I was gonna be like renovating all myself because I grew up doing general construction. Not the case at all.
Yeah, where do we proportionally? Where do we end up compared to the original?
So where we ended up is I abandoned the project. So I was probably about $4,000 in the hole at this point of, I was just gutting it. I was just gutting and gutting. So all my expenses were me just filling up a trailer and driving to the dump and paying the dump for it. So, which was a lot of the dump for Taraka to around $4,000. But yeah, so once I hit that point, I realized, oh gee, I don't know almost anything about what I'm doing. I started talking to banks about construction loans, and they were all like, dude, you're in way over your head. You have no idea what you're doing. Yeah, no, it was definitely a huge wake up call. And so that really inspired me to actually start my education seriously and begin reading, very constantly listening to podcasts. It's definitely a catalyst for the next phase.
So just going back there, like, it's very interesting. You had no interest in real estate and you read these two books. Like, we always like to talk about mindset and maybe triggers or signs, like on the show. Like, what was it in those two books that made you like kind of all of a sudden, it sounds like your parents have been doing it around you, so you've been exposed to it. And what was it about these two books that made you, what hit you?
So I think it was growing up ever since I was around 13, I always wanted to be a serial entrepreneur. I knew that I wanted to create businesses, create cash flow. Like, that was just a general concept I had understood. I grew up in a lot of computer programming. So a lot of my friends talked about how they would build out, code snippets and sell them online. And they just had all these little mailbox money streams from different things that they created. So I was like, okay, cool. I want to do that. So I was always looking for opportunities of mailbox money. And so I read these two books. The one was just How to Invest in Real Estate by Brandon Turner. The other one was Investing in Real Estate with No or Low Money Down. And so as like this, I think I was 19 when I was reading them. This 19-year-old kid, still in college and everything like that, reading this and then going, oh my gosh, I can invest in real estate and it does the whole mailbox money. Like, I'm seeing this connection and it's way bigger than what all my friends were talking about regarding mailbox money. Theirs was like $5 per asset that someone buys online. So that clicked really fast for me. And then also being like a broke college student, I was like, and I could do it with no money down. This is perfect. The ultimate ticket. I've found it. It was a huge emotional play on my part. I don't know that I said there was a big mindset shift in a healthy way. It's more just an emotional trigger. And I was off to the races.
I love that though. But that honestly, that in the long run always wins over waiting 6 years and researching as much as you can. So like, as
long as you keep going, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get constantly, as long as you don't give up, like it will work out.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. It has to change from like motivation to dedication. And that was a key thing I realized after I hit that 8 months. And I was like, shoot, what have I gotten myself into? All motivation's gone. My back's aching. I've been, gutting this thing for months. So it definitely kind of switched at that point into do I keep going forward? Do I just cut it out with the real estate stuff? Like, what do I do at this point?
Well, what happened then, right? Like, the project's not going well. You got to abandon it, give it back. Then you just say, okay, cool, let's do this again.
What's give it back? Did you just give it back to your dad? Did you sell it? Like, how'd that?
Yeah. So my dad still needed it for the parking lot. So it had a parking lot and he had a building nearby. So he was not into real estate in the typical sense. He had bought a building to build out as like a business incubator. So I come from a pretty large family. He always grew us up on the whole rich dad, poor dad thing. He has learned the rich dad, poor dad thing of like, quit your job, become self-employed, create a business. But he never really, I'd say like the second half of Rich Dad Poor Dad, he didn't connect with of the piece of begin investing, not just in like, your typical mutual funds, like begin actually proactively investing and, create large, big business where the whole way you structure it is about you not being a key part of it. So yeah, he'd raised us in that view. So he bought this kind of rundown building for us to start renovating. So that's what I was doing at the time during college. I was kind of fixing up this place to be a business incubator that I could do my college work at and then start studying real estate in as well later on. But it didn't have a parking lot. And this podplex happened to be right behind it and had a parking lot.
This is just out of curiosity. We'll move on. Where's that property? Did they get rehab? Did they get torn down?
It is currently standing, nicely gutted, doing nothing. We're looking at probably we're going to demolish it, make the parking lot even bigger. There's kind of a lot of downtown style development going on. So kind of like doctors' offices, stuff like that's being built up around it. So there needs to be some parking. So we'll probably just turn it into that.
Nice, and best you.
Cool. All right. So how do you have the stones to go for another one now? right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, this was so good.
Yeah, no, it was definitely something that I realized it was my fault. It wasn't like, it was one of those ones I realized if I had actually known what I was doing, I could have made this a good deal. I could have negotiated for, a construction loan up front, could have gotten someone else to maybe partner with me. Like I saw multiple things that I blatantly messed up on. So the last month or so of me doing this gutting, I started listening very, very constantly to the BiggerPockets podcast. And so a lot of things started clicking, which helped to kind of transition my mindset to not completely give up at that point. So my education level was still low. I had gone at this point during that renovation, I'd gone to the BiggerPocket conference. So I'd gone there just to kind of try to meet other people who could give me advice on what I'm doing with the Quadplex. So that I think helped give me a little bit of insight on, there's a future here. It wasn't like I'd only experienced these 2 books and then just this Quadplex. But it definitely was something that I wasn't, I would say it really had to be a dedication shift. And what kind of hit me during all of this was everything started going, really wrong. It was probably, the last week I actually worked on it. The opportunity came up where Brandon Turner, I was following him on Instagram. He posted on his stories that his brother had gotten into a car accident. They totaled their car. They needed money for a new one. And so he was doing kind of like a little GoFundMe. And he said, anyone who donate $500 or more, I'll give them a free 30-minute coaching session. So I saw that in this last week of realizing everything's going awful. And it was actually really neat because I was in the waiting room looking to go in and get my wisdom teeth taken out. So I was about to go under, literally probably about 3 minutes before I got called in. Somebody, he posted this up on his story, one of those 24-hour ones, that it was like, hey, there's this opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And so I saw it, I clicked it, filled out the thing, set the $500, and as soon as I clicked send, they called me, and I went back and was under them for, and out of the loop for the next 2 or 3 days. So it was a really clutch moment. But then that really was a catalyst for getting into the next deals. So that's kind of what helped take me from this blatant failure of a Quadplex. I've continued to look back at it and go, man, there's not like it still does it, but I'm pretty confident I'm moving on from this one. I'm focusing on better deals. But yeah.
Was the $500 a no-brainer? Was the $500 a no-brainer in that sense?
Yeah, to me it was one of those, I went to the BiggerPockets conference. I think I spent like $1,200 or something like that. And I had gone there primarily to hear Brandon Turner speak about real estate. And then to hear that I could spend $500 to talk one-on-one to Brandon about my problem was like I already spent all this money. I flew out to, or I guess I drove out the conference. I already spent all this money trying to get education. And I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing next. So to me, it was, a no-brainer.
Man, I just want to point something out. I was watching Alex Promosi on YouTube, and last night I saw a post. He might have posted yesterday, but he basically said for Facebook ads, he found a guy, and the guy, he bothered the heck out of him, and he said, the guy said, all right, $600 an hour. He's like, I went with like 10 sessions with the guy, and I learned everything about Facebook ads. And at $6,000 made me millions of dollars. And I think it was more about just paying to be an expert. And that was fresh in my mind. And I hear what you're saying. And it's like, we all miss some of that. We step over dollars to pick up pennies mindset.
100%. Yeah. No, I've always kind of gone by or not always, this is a more recent mindset, but I probably adhering to it is that you can either take a ton of time and a ton of failure to learn how to become an expert at something, or you can pay a lot of money to become an expert at something very quickly. And I'm wanting to fast track my wealth as much as I can. Obviously not rushing into it like I did with the Quadplex where I'm failing, but also if there's an expert who can help guide me directly, then that's who I want as an influence directly on my life. I don't want to just always look for the free, podcast and listen to every single podcast episode to learn. Like, no, okay, is there a way that I can get this faster?
Yeah. So is it safe to say if your dentist had been a little bit more efficient, this wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yep. I would be homeless probably by now, bankrupt, everything. Yeah.
Moments. It's all about moments in life.
Yeah. All right. So, but like, I'm assuming there's hundreds of people who sign up for this, right? You're not the only guy who got 30 minutes with Brandon Turner. So talk to us you're able to leverage this into a pretty incredible story. So, walk us through it here.
Yeah. So the deal's going bad. I went ahead and paid the money. I think 50 people or so signed up for it. So he really got his hands full with that offer. But he ended up having his kid get born on the day that I was supposed to have the meeting with him and everything like that. So I got someone reached out and they were like, hey, his wife's in the hospital right now having the kid. Can you possibly reschedule, like 3 months out or whatever? Which is, to me, I was bummed, but obviously I'm not going to argue, hey, this call with me. So 3 months go by. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what to do with the Podflex. At this point, I'd paused. I figured I would continue working on college for now. Thankfully, again, because my dad bought it, I didn't have to pay his living costs. So in that regard, I had a safe space to fail very big, which is great. But once this 3 months came around, I went ahead and I talked to them and I was like, okay, here's this property. Here's what I did. Here's, the mess I've gotten myself into. What do you think I should do? Blah, blah, blah. Went through the whole thing. And his advice to me was, one, if I'm going to fix it, make sure that I'm actually, fixing it, like do the work. Don't just try to hire this all out. There's a ton of lessons that you could learn here. If you're going to still try to go forward on this, make sure that you're present for all the lessons that are going to happen. Don't just try to hire it out to some GC who's going to do the whole thing for you. So he said that, and then we started talking, and the conversation turned from half an hour into almost 2 hours, and it ended up being just talking about life, talking about faith, talking about opportunities, family values, everything like that. And towards the end of it, he was like, hey, what are you doing once you finish up college? And for me at that point, I think I had maybe 8 months left or so at this point. So I'd started college early and kind of fast tracked it. I was like, I really don't have anything planned. Probably just try to figure out what the heck I'm going to do with Podflex, and then I guess move on to the next thing. He said, well, okay, it's interesting that I'm looking at bringing out an intern to try for the first batch. I'm curious about the idea of being a mentor to someone. So that's something you'd be interested in. And immediately I was like, yeah. And so he had me send in my resume, everything like that. And I started waiting. And very quickly I realized this is a golden opportunity that he's going to be sending out to a bunch of people. And I saw him post about the internship and whatnot on his social media about a week later. And I realized, okay, if I'm going to try to beat all these people who are going to want to be, Brandon Turner intern, I got to really stand out because I don't have a work history really right now. I just got college and a failed Podflex. So what I ended up doing was I reached out to his partner who was flipping houses on Maui with, and said, hey, Brandon Turner seemed really interested in me potentially being an intern. He asked me to apply. I was just curious, is there anything that I could help you with right now? I've got time, blah, blah, blah. So he started giving me a bunch of leads, different, foreclosure deals to create all sorts of different stuff to just start collecting data for him. And I put that as like my highest priority. School comes second by far. Just performed really, really well on the task for this guy. And so about a week or so went by of that, and it was kind of a constant exceeding expectation, really cracking down, doing as polished of a job as I could, as quickly as I could, to get him data. And the last thing that he did was he sent me this giant list. It was like 12 pages long of a foreclosure list that had that, I forget what it's called, but it doesn't let you highlight any of the text. So like you can't copy anything. You have to just manually type out everything that's on it. It's just a huge list of foreclosure leads. And he was like, hey, I need you to take this list. I need you to go to this website. I need you to grab information from it and create this new CSV list. Then we can upload it to Deal Machine. He's like, it usually takes me around 8 to 10 hours. If you could just do that, that'd be awesome. So this was one that I started thinking about because I started doing the process and I realized it's an incredibly repetitive task and it was going to take me a long time. And he said he got this list every single month. So it took him 8 to 10 hours every single month. So I did some brainstorming, did some research, and with my programming background, I went ahead and I stayed up all night till 5 a.m. programming a program where you drop in this PDF. It scrapes the code from the back end and is able to grab all of this data, put it into a CSV list, and then take that CSV and go on the internet and scrape the data that it needed, that I was doing all that task. So I took what was a 10-hour task and turned it into a about 30 to 40 second task, just dropping a PDF into the program. So I sent that to him then the next morning, and I made sure to send it over to Brandon as well. Like, hey, I built out this program for you guys, so that way you guys don't have to pay someone to do this every single month for 10 hours or do it yourself. And that pretty much immediately, that sealed the deal. Brandon's partner reached out to him and was like, hey, get this guy out here. This is the one. We don't need to do the interview with all the other people. So he reached out to me and was like, hey, at the end of your semester, you're going to go ahead and fly out here, and you've been chosen. So that was a really unique way to provide value and get an absolutely awesome opportunity out of it, which I'm very certain that I would not have beat the other contestants. I really did not have a background in the type of stuff he was looking to have.
Well, even before providing value, like, let's just talk about being proactive here, right? Like, you created the situation. And I think so many people listen to this, they're like, oh, I can't find a property. I'm looking on the MLS, like, they're waiting. Like, you got to be proactive in whatever it is. You got to force the issue, take ownership of it. And like, I remember hearing that when you told me this the first time, and I was like, man, that's awesome. Like, and I'm glad, like, I'm so happy that, like, when you see something like that it works out, right? And then you take advantage of it, and it all works out. Mark, I know you're still going to jump in here.
No, I just, the listener is like, what Drew did is awesome. And Tom, I'm sure you have something like this, and I know I always do, but we always have those 10 or 12 hour things that are thorns on our side that for some reason we don't find a way to solve, or we just don't know how to solve it. We have to solve it. We think we have to solve it manually. So we keep handing off this task when there's a guy like Drew who could come in and solve those for you. And Drew, you took advantage of such a great situation and solved a pain point. It's just, I don't know, that's a great lesson for everyone listening if you want to early on encourage trying to gain some traction.
Yeah, well deserved. So what did you actually do in the internship then, right? So you get this, you have this wonderful opportunity. Again, like, that doesn't really mean anything, right? What happened? How did you leverage this? Let's keep the story going.
Yeah. So I went out to Maui, and I was supposed to help him with...
That a mad spot?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, amazing. Yeah, I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from Missouri. Small town, grew up with like 200 people in my town. Very, very small, middle of nowhere. So then going out to Maui, I'd gone to the beach before, but I definitely never lived the beach life or anything like that. So it was a really good culture shock. But yeah, so I was out there. I was helping him out with flipping, and I think it was literally maybe a month and a half into this, he came to me and said, hey, so I've got some bad news. I'm going to pull out of flipping on Maui. It's just the permitting process here takes on average a year and a half to get a renovation project. He was like, I'm looking for how to, I don't want to be confined to one flip at a time because it takes so much work. So he's like, if you want, you can go back home, or if you want, I can try to find some other work for you. But the flipping part, I don't have anything else on. So I was like, I'm going to go home. So, keep you here and we'll find something else for you to do. So I transitioned then into a lot of yard maintenance. I'd set up his podcast studio when he was on the BiggerPockets podcast. So get all of that set up, bring on guests, kind of prepare them and walk them through all the steps prior to the interview. I helped him with different events he hosts. So get the mastermind out there. Like, a lot of high-level people all come out and just brainstorm and meet for around like 3 or 4 days. So he kind of put me as a personal assistant. So I was managing his calendar, his email, all sorts of stuff. And I just kind of became a catch-all, jack of all trades, whatever he needed. And what that meant was that I was living in his attached ohana, a little I think it was like a 2-bedroom unit attached to his house. So I was living there every day, getting to spend time with him and talk about real estate, talk about mindset, talk about business, and then even, faith and values, family, everything like that. So what was originally more of a work-based internship transitioned into a development of character and mindset, which is, to me, that was so much more valuable because realistically, I don't really want to do a flipping. So a lot of the skills I would have learned in that really wouldn't have applied to what I'm wanting to do with my version of real estate. But yeah, so it turned into that, and that's pretty much what it was all the way through. I got back in May, so I was there for 8 months.
Man, so you guys really got to know each other. Give us there's got to be like a funny quirk or something. Brandon Turner's like worshipped by so many people. Give us a funny quirk someone doesn't know about. What can you say that's not offensive in any way, but just something silly that our listeners would not know about him?
Okay, this is not necessarily like super funny, but it's something interesting that I found, and I've started noticing in a lot of higher performing circles. Is when I got there, I brought a bunch of balloons and toys and different stuff like that for his daughter Rosie. So every morning I would make a different balloon animal thing, and I'd send it up to their house or whatever that was a toy that she could play with or whatever for that day. And when I was hanging out with Brandon one time, he was like, I used to do balloon animals all the time. And he just started building out these huge balloon things. I was like, oh, geez, this is awesome. Like, it's a very unique, random skill that almost purely is only for the sake of enjoyment and fun and making other people happy. And that was something that I noticed in a lot of different things that he knew how to do. It was little tiny tricks that just make people smile. And it's very personable, not really in any way building up your business credibility or anything like that, but it is massively increasing your charisma, and so I think, it's just like an interesting one. I guess he could have been a clown or something in another life, but it was really neat to see that. He had mentioned how he had done that for Heather whenever he was dating her and whatnot. So it was a neat work of a odd hobby, and that was something that I had done, and I didn't know anyone else did it. Such a weird kind of oddball thing, but he knew that that's something that makes people smile and that is attractive. So, that was kind of neat.
Oh, that's cool. Now, unfortunately, though, we're going to edit this, and you were to say, intern calls Brandon Turner a clown.
Right there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's 100%.
All right, so you become this jack of all trades. You get looped into these other bigger circles. You start looking at bigger properties, start talking to other syndicators out there. Did you know at this point, you're learning a lot of mindset? Are you knowing like, hey, like real estate is for me? We'll talk about BrightInvestor, but are you starting to is this where you're starting to come up with the idea for the company? Like, talk about how the wheels start turning here to where you are today from that position.
Yeah. So while I was out there with Brandon, he asked me for his second child, Wilder, the one that was born during my meeting with him. He wanted to do the whole thing that he did with Rosie, which was buy a quadplex. So that way, by the time Wilder's 18, he'll have his first property that's paid off that can be used college or whatever. Kind of a springboard type thing that a lot of investors are doing now. So he was like, okay, I want to do this, but I'm wanting to diversify my market. I've really always kind of invested in these specific areas. So he was like, okay, if you can just go do some market research and then come back and we'll discuss it and I'll see what you find. But just find me a market that has generally a good rent to price ratio and is appreciating well, like an emerging market. I was like, okay, cool, I can do that. And after about 40 hours of ruling through data on the web everywhere, I came back to him. I was like, okay, well, I've got a ton of data for you to look through. I've tried to visualize it as possible, like best possible, and simplify it down to the top markets I've found. But I gotta be honest with you, I feel like the more and more time I spend on this, the less and less I really understand which market is more preferable and everything. Like, my brain. And Brandon was like, yeah, that's what all the rookies run into, and that's why they all just invest in their backyard. They all just invest in their backyard or wherever the first person that they meet tells them to. They really don't actually do market research. We'll find maybe one or two cool facts about the area to feel like they know why they're investing there, but realistically, it's not actually the case.
You can back into your decision.
Exactly.
Yes, and then like these are the reasons why I did it.
100%. Yeah, it's like it's a really cool place. Got a quaint diner down by you're like, okay, this actually has nothing to do with the long-term appreciation of my property and portfolio, which is that's literally a multi-million-dollar decision. If you're going to buy 10 properties, 20 properties in a specific market, and you have a 6% appreciation versus an 8% appreciation, you're talking thousands and thousands, if not potentially millions of dollars different. And so anyhow, he wasn't very satisfied with my market research. He was like, cool, whatever, but I also don't understand why you're choosing these markets fully enough. And you can't understand, you can't explain it to me simply. So you have to kind of keep doing some more research. And so again, I turned to software and I built out a quick software to pull in a bunch of rent to price data by zip code and visualize all of it as a heat map across the US. So kind of overcomplicating the problem potentially, but I built this thing in maybe about 3 days, 4 days, something like that. And I brought it to him and I said, okay, I built this thing. Now you can see where the higher rent price areas are versus lower. So based on this visually, I've chosen these different areas, and I was able to kind of zoom in and show him why. And so he saw that and he was like, oh my gosh, perfect. Like this is exactly, this takes all that data that you were showing me the other day and makes it really simple. I understand, and I agree with why you're saying I should invest in that specific zip code of that city. So I was like, sweet, home run. And then he told me, he was like, honestly, this is one of the last resources that isn't available for real estate investors right now. There's calculators, there's deal finding, property lead lists, all sorts of different platforms out there, but there really isn't something for newer investors, not people who are paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars of data, but newer investors to do market research easily without just having to go to a dozen different websites like I was doing. So that was the huge turning point for me in terms of inspiration for what eventually became BrightInvestor.
Got it. So we have this inspiration. There's still a long ways to go though, right? Like I have this idea, I have this concept, and then saying like, all right, well, I'm going to dedicate my life to making this thing work is a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
So what, Brandon Turner backing you, or I should say, giving you that emotional support is probably some good backwinds, but what else, man? Like that's still a huge jump, right? Like that is still a lot. Like did you see this in the marketplace? Did you truly believe that, if I build this, I'll find it? That's because that's going to be scary. Like, I just want to play again, man. Like it's scary, right? Like everything's going on. You're going to put 100% into this.
Yeah. Well, so originally I did not put 100% into this. So I was like, oh, awesome. Okay. I'll do some research into that, do some market research to see if this is actually needed in the area and whatnot. But no, I pretty much put this on a back burner for a while. So, investor girl, Brittany Arneson, she had come down to Maui and she had started talking to me about commercial real estate. And I got really interested in that. I was like, oh, maybe I want to do that because I saw how much cap rates affect valuation. And man, this is the fastest way to become a millionaire. So I started working for her for about, again, another 8 months. I thought my whole life has been done in 8 month chunks or whatever, but I worked for her for maybe 8 months. I worked for a couple other syndication companies. And I was just building out computer systems, building out the whole funnel for bringing investors in, marketing, all sorts of different stuff to them. During that, I began kind of getting the itch again towards the software. So once I'd moved back to Missouri, I met a guy named Donato Callahan up in St. Louis, about an hour and a half away from where I live. And he reached out to me and we started talking about commercial real estate syndications as well. And he said, hey, I've got this awesome project that I'm working on the side to make some money. And he showed me a screen, and it was a data visualization map of appreciation across St. Louis. You could see which specific neighborhoods were appreciating better. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Okay, let me show you something. And I showed him what I had built for Brandon. And immediately at that point, we clicked and realized, oh, there's something here. We both saw this need. He had already been being paid for making these, maps on the side. And I already had Brandon Turner tell me this is needed. So at that point, I really was like, okay, actually, I have this background in software. I know, I know people in the industry. I grew up doing a lot of marketing, so I knew and was familiar with how to build out a platform like this in terms of actually getting a customer base. And then I knew real estate and he knew real estate. So it was really a nice combination of 3 key parts that were needed to make the platform work. So at that point, that's when I actually fully dove in. I started doing market research to see, is this needed? Started talking to a lot of investors, asking them, if something like this existed, would you use it? How much would you pay for it? What would you wish that it had and could do? So we started doing a bunch of research, and about 3 months after that point, when we first had that initial discussion, we launched development and brought on 3 developers to begin programming this platform out.
All right, so a lot goes into it here. So when you talk about appreciation rates, are you just, give us a taste of what the product actually does here? You're taking historical appreciation rates. Are you making predictions on where they will continue to go? I know from our conversations there, you overlay crime stats, school rankings. For someone who's never heard of BrightInvestor, can you give us, call it the 2-minute rundown at a very high level?
Yeah. No, so kind of like I discussed when I was working with Brandon, what we've done is we've created a platform that makes real estate market research very, very simple by taking all of the places that you're already going for your data, typically, like places like Rentometer, Crimeometer, Mashvisor, Great School, the census, Bureau of Labor Statistics, all these different places you're already going. And we've gotten contracts with them and have all their data in one place that you can view quickly. So you're learning one system of how to query this data rather than having to learn a different system for every single program. You can visualize all of it on a map by color, so by heat map, by comparing zip codes, by looking at pins, and then you can stack all of those layers. So if you have an appreciation layer where you're comparing, let's say the whole city by zip codes, and you're coloring that out, and you can see the higher appreciating versus lower appreciating areas, then you can layer that with a crime heat map, and now you can see where more crime are happening, and then you could put schools on there as well, so you can see where are the better school districts, and what are those schools rated. We've got things like build permits, so new developments and renovation. We've got that by pin, so you can see again as a whole heat map, or zoom in and see what specifically has just been pulled this week as a new development project and where. Seeing that over time, where is more development happening, where is that path of progress happening in the market. Seeing average rents, everything like that, seeing comp for rents. Basically just taking the whole process that it is to actually understand all of the data that's going to affect your portfolio. You can see here really quickly in a visual format, and then you can create a PDF to then share with other investors who may be partnering with you or anything like that to get a quick overview and show them as well and get them on board, rather than sending them a bunch of links and screenshots and CSV.
That's awesome. What was the time frame from concept to launch?
From concept to launch, I'll say from development start to launch, because that's really when it actually started being aggressive. That was, I believe, right at 16 months.
How much fun was that, or how much stress, or it just sounds so exciting, and you're like, I got this on board, we lost it. To tell us the highs and lows, building.
It's like an episode of Silicon Valley, right? Like that's what's going on in my head. Right? Dudes are in a garage just pounding out code and slamming Mountain Dew.
Yeah. Definitely drinking Monster by Grove. I'd say it was very, very fun. Like I mentioned, ever since I was 13 or so, I'd always been wanting to be a serial entrepreneur. I'd been programming computer programs since I was 11. I was very nerdy. And so this is something I kind of always dreamed of, but getting to actually start doing it and combining it with real estate, now my new passion, really felt fulfilling to my identity. I was very passionate about the project. I was working a job during almost all of development. I quit my job a little bit before it, I needed to spend more time. But yeah, I was working pretty much every single day of the week, typically until about 11 or 1 a.m. So it really was a lot of work. And if you're someone out there, I've had a bunch of people say, oh, I've got all these ideas for a software company and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's nice, but it is a crazy ton of work. And so unless you really think that you're wanting to dedicate an entire season of your life solely to that, or at least heavily primarily to that, I would not recommend it, because there's a lot that goes into building out a software company.
Was there ever an incident where you thought of pulling the plug?
Yeah. So we raised private investor capital to pull this thing out. We had to pay all the developers, we had to pay for all the data access, hosting, different assets, everything like that. So we raised, I think it was $45,000 for the first 4 months of development. And once we got to that point, we were bringing it to all sorts of other real estate investors saying, hey, are you interested in investing and everything like that? And we got a lot of people saying, man, this is absolutely awesome, but no, I only invest in real estate. And it kept being that answer over and over and over. It's just like, no, sorry, I've got all my money in project. It's absolutely awesome. I think it's going to be really successful, but I only invest in real estate. And so we realized what we initially had thought of, as real estate investors are going to see the value in this and they're going to want to invest. We pretty quickly realized, actually, real estate investors typically tend to be extremely bullish on only buying physical assets. They don't really like the whole, there's no physical asset on it. If the business, essentially if the server goes down, business doesn't exist. So, there's not a whole lot if it's not active and online.
There's a big difference for a real estate investor between IP and real prop. It's It's like you almost like when a real estate investor hears about someone investing in the stock market, they almost cringe like that
every time. Yep.
Yeah.
No, so I was considering pulling the plug at that point when it had been maybe like 2.5 months of trying to raise capital, and we just kept getting no's. But once we got the next round of capital, we have all this investor money on us. We can't fail. We have to keep going, and that helped a lot with the whole thing up till 1 a.m. extremely frequently. Like I generally was working typically 80 to 90 hour work week almost every week the last 4 months prior to launch. It was probably too much work, honestly. I'm not sure that I'd recommend everyone do that. I'd probably say maybe save up some money so you can hire a VA or something to help you out.
What you mentioned, people who are exploring other neighborhoods. What if someone they like their area, right? They feel they got a good grasp, they want to scale there. Is there still value to them within your product?
Yeah. So we've been working on that front a lot this launch. So trying to help people who are already in an established market. And the primary way we're doing that is through build permits. So build permits specifically is a data type that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to get access to per year. And most investors are not willing to do that. However, especially in the case of flippers always want to make sure that the place that they're buying in is going to be worth more by the time they're going to sell it. If it's on any kind of downward trajectory, that's bad. So with the build permit, being able to see where are new developments happening prior to them even having bought the land, where are renovations happening, how many renovations are happening that are in progress right now on this street. If I can see that there's, the neighbor's house and the one after that and the one across the street, all of those are, being renovated right now and they've got multiple permits out on them. That's a full-blown renovation. Then I know that my property, by buying it and renovating it, that there's going to be a lot of value being built up on that street specifically. Number two, if you see another area and you can check the past 12 months, there's been barely any renovations happening. That's not a very active development zone. And you're going to want to maybe look for a different street to be buying on. Connected in with that, I would say, is when you get a deal that you're interested in, if you drop that into BrightInvestor, you can view all these other data types against that deal. So you can be seeing your pen and see, are the crimes really high on this street, or, what is the rent right around this area specifically? Because now you're going to get more local comp to that specific area rather than just be familiar with the general, Chicago area within these 3 zip codes or something like that.
I guess even when you are investing in your backyard, I was thinking about your question, Tom. It's like, it's just so much, it helps you go in with eyes wide open versus having to be reactive. So if you have a higher crime area that you like, and maybe it hasn't happened to you, or maybe it's not so obvious that it's a higher crime area, you at least know now to put up a fence, or to add extra lighting or whatnot. You kind of get out ahead of some of those things that potentially attract crime versus you being proactive and preventing it.
Yep.
At least on your property.
Yeah. And Drew, are you doing anything with Airbnb? Are we pulling any data from there as well?
Yeah. So I did have one Airbnb as well that I'd worked on, but we have Airbnb listings, so you can see what Airbnbs are listed. So you can filter by bedroom, square foot size, everything like that, to see the nightly prices, as well as we have Airbnb occupancy data, so you can see by every single zip code what is the most typical occupancy, like median occupancy in that area, and there's the whole Instagram showing kind of what that layout is. How steep of a bell curve is that, and what do you need to be using in that zip code for your occupancy rate that you're going to assume.
Yep. Yeah, that's valuable, right? Because that's something everyone's trying to, they're scraping Air DNA or whatever it might be just to kind of make heads and tails of some of the numbers. Is people are trying to best optimize projects right now.
Yep.
Mark, anything else to add here?
No, that was great. I'm looking forward to my free trial. No, I'm joking. I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Yeah, how about let's get some free trials over here. Let's hit up some. We'll get some listeners. No, in all seriousness, though, I think the next step is let's put on a webinar, right? Yeah, I think our listeners would want to see what this is all about, and from there they can make the plunge if they think it's worth the value.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely would be something valuable, and like I mentioned, we're really trying to focus this more towards smaller investors. So like I said, we have $100,000 a year type data type in here, as well as all the subscriptions that we're paying for Rentometer, Crimeometer, Mashvisor, but we're charging between $50 and $100 a month for access on the platform. So it's definitely, we try to keep the cost very low so people can afford to be using this consistently in their investing without breaking the bank.
Drew, you're such a young guy. You have such an amazing story, and this story is only going to continue to grow. I'm just excited for you. We really dove into. You're so optimistic. You have the definition of fail fast. I love that. Yep. You're the walking, breathing fail fast. I don't know. I'm just really excited for talking to you 10 years from now to see what you've done. So thank you really much. Talk to me because you're
doing it at 35. It feels like, but
yeah. I'll be 34. Yep.
So, all right, Mark, ready to take this?
Ready, man. All right, Drew, what is your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this while only being 24?
Yeah, I would say the big competitive advantage that made a difference between who I used to be and now is I am aggressive at learning new mindset and then applying those quickly. So I read a lot. I typically read between 5 to 6 books every month, and then I try to apply those as quickly as possible to change my mindset, because I know that's the biggest thing that's actually caused me success in anything, was specific mindset shifts that I had that other people around me did.
Nice. What is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property?
Not knowing specifically where they are. So giving general advice on this, I would recommend build out your list of things that you need to do, all the tasks, and put a specific due date on every single one of those tasks, as well as when you're going to make your first letter of intent, like making your first offer. I really think too many people constantly talk about what they need to be doing, but they never actually put the date, and that kills so much progress.
Yeah, Mark, we say it all the time. We say, hey, we're going to have an event, and then it gets recorded, and now we have to host the event. Right? We throw it out to the world, and now
I use it.
Now we got to do it.
I use the podcast all the time. Hey, we're going to put that on our website. And then I think, oh shit, this episode's coming up. I got to get it done. So whatever your motivation is. All right. What do you do for fun, Drew?
For fun, I do a lot of stuff. I absolutely love networking. So I do a lot of that, of just getting on phone calls with people, going up to different cities to attend meetups. But I do spike ball, gymnastics. I like playing basketball, soccer, frisbee, all sorts of stuff. Kind of anything active. I try to compensate for how much I'm constantly on my computer doing programming and everything. I try to really get more active out there.
What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you'd recommend to our listeners?
I've not heard this one mentioned on any podcast before, but it was one of the biggest ones that affected, I think, everything in my life, which is Rejection Proof by, I'm going to butcher this name probably, Jia Jiang, something like that. Absolutely amazing book. He had a TED Talk on it, and it talks about, he went through 100 days of every day having to do something that is basically sure to be rejected, and learning how to make those asks anyhow and do those tasks, and all the different mindset shifts that he had during that journey. It's really, really good.
Nice. I added it to the list. Mark, have you hit that one or no?
No, I haven't. I was thinking of a funny wife or marriage joke there, but all right. Yeah, no, I'm gonna check that one out. All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network you'd highly recommend to other investors as a quality resource.
Yeah. So I found that going to people like Brandon Turner and stuff like that is really not very valuable to smaller people who are at a smaller stage. It's usually better to find someone maybe a step or two ahead of where you are. Someone that I've been gaining a ton of value from recently is Tyler and Dosha Madden. So Tyler Madden, Dosha Madden, both are on Instagram. They've been putting out a ton of content on managing your business for real estate, flipping, everything like that. But a lot of it's more directly relatable to where I think a lot of investors are, rather than being, Brandon managing millions of dollars in his fund and stuff. It's a very different experience.
All right, Drew, thank you so much. You provided a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Drew_Mccluskey. That's where I do almost all my networking. I'm very, very, very active on there. So just hit me up with a DM and we can get on a call, or we can do whatever. Just happy to meet friends on that. Besides that, you can also find out more about BrightInvestor, just at BrightInvestor.com. Yeah.
All right. Mark, are you ready for the Chicago Fact?
I am. Today's Chicago Fact brought to you by Renovo. Alan Tang bought a hat from us. So, Alan, thank you. If Drew or myself get this question right, the Renovo will send you a $50 gift card.
Ellen, so Ellen Tang is my client. So Ellen, congrats. He just bought a duplex. This is about 2-3 months ago. We kind of tied into this episode even, jumped in, bought something. This was one of Blake's properties, Mark, off market, needs about $50K in rehab. And for his first project, he jumped in and took it on. And now it's Matt Nosom, one of our sponsors, finishing it up, and it's going to be completed. And, a lot of people would have shied away from that. So Ellen, well deserved. And let's get you $50 back on this rehab now. So, all right. So we mentioned Maui on the show. So we're going to go with a little bit of a guessing game here, Mark. How many miles is it from Maui to Chicago? And your options are 1,750, 2,500, 4,000, 5,700. How many miles from Maui to Chicago?
Is this just him or am I answering too?
He goes first, and you get a shot too. Don't pick the same one as him. Double up on the options for our boy Ellen here.
Well, it's like 2,000 in LA from here. So, and I know it's far. I'm going to go 4,000.
Okay.
All right. I'm pretty familiar.
Is that you look disappointed?
I would go with 4,000, but I'm going to say you say 5,700.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's I'll go.
Oh, that's all your mileage. 4,000.
Damn. All right. All right. Alan, thank you. Thank you for purchasing a hat. Thank you for buying property from Tom. And we'll send you out the $50 gift card brought to you by Renovo. All right. That's great. I love it. I'm telling you, I always has such an energy when we get the question right.
It demoralizes the show when you get it wrong at the end.
Sure. Thanks for coming on, Tom. Thanks as always. Listeners, check out Build Your Team on straightupchicagoinvestor.com. We have a news page. There's I think there's 18 vendors on there that are top quality vendors that me and Tom have mostly used, but they are awesome. And if you're trying to build your team, we want to make sure that you're going in it the right way with the right people. So it's all about your network and who you know. So check that out, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Drew, awesome to have you out there. Again, look forward to seeing you in 10 years. And Tom, thank you as always. Listeners, we'll see you next Thursday.
Thanks all.
All right.